Excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Daigle, and I'm the co-director of the Autism Alliance, joined by my colleague and co-director, Pam McKillop. I would like to thank you all for joining us this evening. The Autism Alliance welcomes our January guest speakers, Dr. Sheryl Rosin and Caileen Harvey from Boston Speech and OT Specialists. Tonight's presentation is Climbing the Language Mountain. Will my child with ASD ever speak? This presentation was provided to the American Speech Language Hearing Association's National Conference. It focuses on the foundational skills that come before words and how to meet your child at the level to help them grow through those communication levels, communicative levels, pardon me. This program is scheduled from 6:30 to 7:30 tonight. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy the evening, and I turn it over to Dr. Rosin and Caileen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. So we're going to get started just because I know we don't have a lot of time. We want to be able to present the information to everyone, but please feel free to stop us and ask questions along the way because we don't want anyone to walk away saying, oh, I wish I would ask that question. And we'll try to give some time at the end as well. But we do want, if you have a burning question in the middle of our presentation, to please, go ahead and stop us. We're going to have some dialogue together. So Caileen and I have set up a presentation that really walks you through what a visit might look like with a child and a parent and a family, a discussion kind of about their child and when will their child ever speak. So it might be something that you've had a discussion, with somebody in the past about this. And so we're going to frame it and sort of tee it up for you so that you can maybe ask some of these appropriate questions to your provider, or to also think about your child's development and how your child will move up what we're going to call the language mountain, and how we can help them to get to the top of that language mountain for your child, wherever the top may be for them. So Caileen, are you ready? I'm going to share our screen and okay.
I'm ready.
All right, perfect. So hopefully this will work. It's always the biggest challenge, but it looks like we are good. All right, can you guys see that okay? All right. So, as Allison said, and Pam, we are from Boston Speech and Occupational Specialists. We are both speech language pathologists. We have a private practice in Wellesley, Massachusetts that is recent. We opened just probably about 5-6 months ago. And we also have a practice in Palm Beach, which is called Palm Beach SOS. And so we branched out to Boston just a few short months ago to bring more services, and especially developmental, relationship-based, play-based therapies to the community, which is really been well received and needed. So we're going to look at the language development of children with autism from a functional developmental perspective, and also apply these early intervention techniques to facilitate communication by what we said, climbing the language mountain. Right. So just a little background, the reason why we're talking about this and why this is really, such an important area to discuss is that 40% of children with ASD are nonverbal, and leading to really probably the most frequently asked question that I get in my practice every day is, will my child ever speak? And as speech language pathologists, that is our primary goal. But really, for many families of children with ASD, that is their primary goal. That's why they come to us. That is what they are hoping that we can help. So it's our job to appropriately answer this question based on research, and to assist the parents using some evidence-based, what we call taxonomies, or ways of thinking about this, and different intervention practices. So let's talk about the biggest wish, right? All parents have that one big wish for their child with autism. We want our child to talk. So do we, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to review a conversation from a day in an SLP practice, as we help parents to understand their child using a child-centered developmental lens and intervention practice.
So
All right.
I'll be the parent. We're going to do like a little back and forth skip.
I'm just going to shut my door. Sorry.
Absolutely. So the parent comes in, and we do a lot of parent training. So there's a lot of room for dialogue for the parents on top of the direct therapy time with the child. So we encourage that sharing of emotions and what's going on at home. So this parent says, to be honest, I'm a little frustrated because for us, our child's talking is our top priority.
So I say, well, he's already starting to communicate. He takes your hands to get what he wants. He's starting to understand some routines, right?
But that's not talking. He doesn't even say hi when he meets someone.
Well, but he's got some words that he uses sometimes.
I know, but I want him to talk like his brother does.
His brother's almost 18 months.
Yeah, and he's already starting to put words together and you can actually carry on a little conversation with him. I just wish our other son could do that too.
Guess what? I'm confident that he will, but he's got to call what we call the language mountain.
The language mountain? What's that?
So all parents have this fundamental wish that their child will talk and be able to carry on a conversation. Sorry. But we share this wish too. So in order to get to the top of the mountain, we have to, are we skipping slides here? Sorry.
Oh, that picture.
Oh, I was like, what happened to our language mountain picture? There it is. So sorry. So, we have to talk to them about what we call the functional developmental level approach. This is really important for parents to understand because that's what helps them to know what level their child is so that we can help explain to them when they may be ready to talk. So we're going to talk about these in just generalities, but if you can take one thing away from this talk, aside from, how do we get to the top, this will really help you to organize your thinking about your child and where they are. So level 1 is called shared attention and self-regulation. And this happens from birth to 3 months. That leads to level 2, which is engaging and relating to others, which is from 2 to 7 months. And level 3 is two-way communication back and forth with gestures. So I want to stop there and think about those first 3 levels. If you see those, you can see that there are not words yet in these first 3 levels because these are the steps to climbing the language mountain. So first off, we have to share attention. We're sharing attention with each other right now. And for the most part, we're pretty much self-regulated. Unless we're feeling chilly or, we need to take a drink or something like that, we're able to sit here and share attention so that we can move to level 2, which is engage and relate to each other. And then we can communicate back and forth with gestures, right? So we can point, we can show, we can give, we can do all these gestural types of things that help us to communicate if we're not using our words. Then we can start to think about using words and phrases in level 4. And so what will happen a lot of times is parents will come and have their biggest wish that they want their child to talk, but we still have big holes in the child's language development, meaning they're not even looking at us. They're not even sharing attention with us. They're not self-regulated at all. So that is going to impede them from being able to engage and relate to us, which means then we're not going to have functional two-way communication with gestures, which means we're really going to struggle with our words and phrases. So there is this hierarchy to learning language. So we try to explain that to our parents right off the bat and give them these functional developmental levels to look at to see, okay, where does my child fit on here? Because your child may be 6, 7 years old, but still not able to share attention and have those big holes in the development. And then you're trying to teach them to use their words and phrases, which would be a top-down approach versus a bottom-up approach. So hopefully this is making sense to you. So when we continue our conversation between parent and clinician, you'll see how we guide them and how we help them to understand how to move the child up the language mountain by understanding their functional developmental levels. Once we are at a level 4 and the child can actually use words and phrases and has more mood regulation, then we can move to more advanced types of interaction by pretend play, answering WH questions, feeling and understanding our emotions and the emotions of others in level 6. So this is a really good way or map, a roadmap for you to think about for your child. So think about that tonight before, when we finish, we'll maybe ask some questions like, where is your child on the functional developmental level scale? And maybe that will help you to see when or how we're going to get to that actual biggest wish of talking. So those are the first 3 steps, right? So we have to be able to share attention, we have to be able to be engaged, and we have to be able to interact in back and forth fashion, because that is the foundation of language. And this can take sometimes a year or even more, depending on how fast that child can climb, so to speak. So here's our language mountain, which also, breaks it up into the functional developmental levels that we just talked about. At the bottom of the mountain, you see shared attention. You see engagement. You see that two-way back and forth communication. That child is climbing up that mountain to get to their expressive language, their gestural communication, to get to their comprehension of language, to give, to get those commands, to understand routines, so that they can then use their single words, which you can see is at the top, almost at the top of the mountain. Then they begin sentences, and then they have conversations. So the child will get there in their own time, but we have to teach them in an appropriate developmental way. So that is going to bring us to, the real key to how to do that, which Caileen and I are, so animated and affective and fun. That's the key to helping the children to have these social interactions and play with you and engage with you, so that they can start to form those relationships and feel motivated inside to want to interact with you and communicate with you. So this nonverbal play is really the fastest way to help your child gain language, because that leads to social interaction. And that is what we have to think of first off and foremost. So you probably know there's lots of ways to teach language. There's these structured, sit down and drill your child. And there's lots of ways to, say this and say that. But without having the fun and without building that rapport and that shared attention and that engagement and that nonverbal communication, your language isn't going to be as effective, or maybe not come at all, until you fill in the gaps and fill in the bottom of what is important. Because gestural communication is really, really important. And a lot of times, individuals kind of just forget about the gestural communication, and they don't think that that's really important, but it is, because your child really will understand the world and will start to be able to communicate with other people once they have these first 3 steps. So we want to really work on thinking and helping them, because children will talk. They will, even if it's using augmentative communication, which is talking, right? Is communicating, is speaking. And when they can do these things, when they can communicate gesturally, when they can follow routines, when they can solve simple problems, when they can play very simple pretend games, when they can have longer back and forth interactions, we call these circles of communication. And when they can follow one step, spontaneous, not those routinized commands, by themselves to go get something or to give something to someone else that isn't familiar, that's when they have the foundations and they'll be ready to communicate. So when all these preliminary milestones at the bottom of the language mountain are in place, then single words will come. And then they'll multiply and you'll have more expressive language. So after several more months to a year, you'll have 2-word sentences, and it'll just keep building and longer sentences, and finally conversations. Conversations is the last milestone. So depending on the child, this could take a couple of years. So then you think, a couple of years, whew. So, I explain all this to parents, but most often they're just not really hearing me. They want their child to talk no matter what. So they're thinking, well, what do you mean a couple of years? I don't want to go backwards a couple of years. I don't want to wait a couple of years. I want this to happen pronto. But we want to make sure that what we're teaching the children, we're teaching them so that they have the building blocks to get where they need to be, and that it's functional and that it's effective.
Mm-hmm. So often they'll ask, isn't there any way we could speed up this process?
And I can say, sure, we can put in more time. Intensity will definitely speed up the process. But if you go beyond 2 to 3 hours a day, the child will burn out, and then you'll burn out. Then everybody in the family will suffer.
Yeah, but I mean, we're putting in the time, but I'm talking about speeding up speech somehow.
Well, actually, you can speed up speech.
How?
by repetitive drilling and focusing on speech, but you have to be careful not to speed up speech at the cost of the language.
I thought those were the same things. What's the difference?
Okay, so maybe I didn't make myself clear, right? There's a big difference between speech and language. Kind of think about those kids that, have Asperger's syndrome, what we used to call Asperger's syndrome.
Yeah, they're smart, but different, like Temple Grandin. I saw her on YouTube one time.
Yeah, so she's an adult. When children with Asperger's syndrome are young, they have good speech, but they have difficulty with engagement and the back and forth of real communication. They have difficulty carrying on a conversation. So we call this having problem with pragmatics, the problem with socially effective communication. So they're good at speech, but not so good at language.
I get it. So speech is what comes out of your mouth.
And language is the ability to communicate.
So you can speak, but not really communicate.
Exactly. So I have a lot of parents, who drilled their children to speak, drill before they were truly ready, right? They were putting the roof on the top or top-down approach, not a bottom-up approach. So the children did develop words, but they weren't connected to people in a natural way. Most of these children sounded robotic and had poor gestural communication with like flat voices or odd sounding talk, or they just used words to get what they wanted, but they didn't enjoy interacting and conversing with people.
And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that. It's tempting to just go for speech. It takes a lot longer and a lot of patience and time to build this capacity for real communication. So instead of climbing a language mountain, let's think of it as building a house. So first is the foundation, right, which is the attention, the engagement, a few back and forth circles of interaction, and then comes the walls. So lots of circle, the ping pong back and forth of communication, the gestures, the problem solving. Then comes the roof, the words, the sentences, the conversation. So there's no way around these functional developmental levels when you're trying to build a solid structure.
It's like the House of Bricks and the Three Little Pigs. I've been reading the story to the boys. They've been huffing and puffing all around the house. So we can speed up the process of talking
and build a straw house, or we can focus on language and communication more than speech.
And build a brick house.
Right on. So, it takes longer this way, but it's better. So here's the analogy, that I use, and I want parents to see and kind of understand, like, we want this beautiful house on the right? We want, our house to be solid. We don't want this shaky foundation, like in the left, or the shaky walls, on the right. We want to work from a bottom-up approach. So hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying now, that there's no way around the language mountain. It's hard convincing parents to start basic. They don't want to start at shared attention. Most often parents are saying, I just want my child to talk. That's my biggest wish. But it's really, truly the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get a lot of parents that will come in and say, like, well, it doesn't look like you're doing speech. It looks like you're just playing with my kid, but we're using these techniques and we're really focusing on these foundational skills, and we want to teach them how to do that as well. So hopefully at this point, the parent would say, okay, I'm convinced, we shouldn't force speech, but if we do it your way, how long before we get to the top of this language mountain?
I don't have a crystal ball, but let me walk you through a rough timeline on how long it will take for your child to climb up the language mountain. So here's again the chart. Follow with me. So then we can look and see, like, where is your child? Is your child still having difficulty sharing attention and engaging back and forth with you? Then they're really at the bottom or the base of the mountain. If your child can have back and forth interaction and use some good gestural communication and understand routines, then the single words are coming. They're going to be there. They're just at the cusp of development. Now, if your child has more of a motor planning disorder and there's something called apraxia, which makes it difficult to actually produce verbal speech, then we're still at the level where now we can really augment with some augmentative communication, and it will be effective for the child, just like it would be if they're using some, verbal oral speech. So, there are a lot of people in the augmentative communication world that says there isn't a hierarchy, but there really still is an understanding of how language develops. So we can create speech, right? Remember, but at what cost? We really have to think about functional language. So let's talk about how to help your child climb the language mountain, and so that he or she will have the best chance of developing functional language that truly communicates with others. So the intervention that Caileen and I use that helps children and families to develop language and communication in this functional way is called the Play Project. And the Play Project is a parent-mediated, early intensive intervention program for children with autism. So it helps the parent to understand what their child's functional developmental level is, where that child is functioning within those first 6 levels, and profiles them with what is their comfort zones, what are things they like, so that we can use them to help them learn and engage and interact with us. And what is their overall sensory profile like? Because that's also going to impact their communication and their development. So first and most importantly, like we said, is we have to have fun together, and we're going to teach parents how to have fun. I know that kind of sounds kind of silly, but it really is the thing that leads us to having shared attention and engagement with our child, so that we can have this longer and longer back and forth interaction. So we focus on that right away in the Play Project. And then, assuming all goes well, the child starts to march up the mountain with gestures and improving their receptive language. And after that, a lot of single words. And this could take, up to 9 months to a year. So I'm being optimistic here, is, this is based on each child's profile, but it's a skill set that sometimes really takes some time, because the child may be engrossed in what they like and what they enjoy. And if we don't meet them where they're at and start to have fun with them, to break the pattern of, I want to be over here by myself and I don't want to engage with you, but now that you're fun and exciting and doing what I love, I want to interact with you. And so if you do what the child loves being with you. So after that, the child will hopefully start to talk in 2- and 3-word phrases in another 9 to 12 months or so. But we have to go slowly and go up the language mountain. So some of the Play Project basic principles that Caileen and I do every day is, teaching parents and doing it ourselves is to have fun with people. As I just said, do what the child loves. When you do what the child loves being with you. The child's love of others is others doing what the child loves. So if you do it in that way and you put in the time, 2 hours a day, broken up into these 15 to 20-minute sessions, by playing at the right functional developmental level, by using comfort zones or things that the child really loves, and understanding their sensory profile, things that they like auditorily, things that they, dislike auditorily or visually or tactily or with lots of different senses, you can connect, or it can make you disconnect with a child. So you have to play at the right level based on that child's profile. And that's really the crux of the Play Project. That's what the Play Project is all about, is reading the child's cues and their intent, and slowing down the pace of your play, and observing and waiting for the child's idea and following that and responding to what that child wants, and opening and closing circles of communication by building on the child's interest. And then you can move up the language mountain, right? So in general, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. And in research says that, having a child with mild autism costs a child at least 2 years of their life. And that's a lot.
So you're saying it'll take about 2 years and he'll be talking?
Not just talking, but really communicating. And it's going to be fun along the way. So we have to have some faith in the process. So let's talk about what you can do right now to promote language. So the next step in language for your child involves gestures, right? We've got the shared attention. We've got the engagement by having fun. So now we're going to work on the gestures. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of gestural communication to your child's language development. Because if you think about it, up to 80% of our communication is in the form of gestures. So there's 3 different types of gestures. There's big gestures and little gestures and micro gestures. We won't get too much into that, but it really is true. If you turn off the volume on your TV and you watch it, you can get a pretty good idea about what's happening in that show, because the gestural communication is going to tell you, is somebody angry? Is somebody sad? Is, how are they feeling? What's the feeling life of that individual? Are they looking at somebody else? Are they watching something? Are they, are they feeling cold? Are they feeling hot? Right? We don't have to say anything. We can just communicate that with our body and our gestures. And that is 80% of the communication message. So we can't ignore gestural communication. So let's make sure that we pay attention to the intention behind the gesture and treat the gestures as if they really matter, because they do. So we're going to give you a little example of ignoring gestures and see how silly it can be when therapists are ignoring a child's gestures, because in some more traditional approaches to teaching language, the child will point and they'll gesture and they'll do things, and the clinician is just waiting for them to say the word, or the parents just waiting for them to say the word. Now, we might not be at that level yet because we're still practicing our shared attention and our engagement and our gestural communication, and we haven't been able to say that word yet. So by punishing them and ignoring their gestures, by not responding to them, impoverishes their communication and makes them less apt to communicate. So here's a little example of a child named Johnny who is really trying to communicate effectively, right? So he wants some juice from the fridge. He's gesturing, he's reaching, he's pointing, he's making faces that clearly indicate with gestural language that he wants juice. And his mom says, "Johnny, what do you want?" And Johnny's arm is out, and he's pointing, and he's grunting, and he's reaching. And mom says, "What do you want?" And Johnny's grunting, and now he's starting to get frustrated because he's not saying what mom wants him to say. And finally, he just gives up, and he starts crying and starts to wander off. And then mom says, "What do you want? Say juice. Say, I want juice, please." So Johnny comes back in anticipation because he hears juice. And mom says, "Say juice. I want juice, please." And then eventually, after many trials, Johnny may learn to say juice, but this is a big mistake of parents and clinicians who think that speech is the goal. No, language is the goal. Communication is the goal. And early language is about gestures, not words. If we're walking up the language mountain and we're building that foundation, we have to acknowledge all forms of communication, because Johnny was clearly communicating what he wanted. He was doing it gesturally. So if we ignore those gestures, then Johnny's mother is basically ignoring his most important communication system. And as a result, Johnny's gestural language may be impoverished. And then he'll give up.
And can I jump in here? We will still, even if that kid is at those earlier levels and they are gesturing, which means they're right before single word communication, we're still going to model that language. If he's reaching, communicating, we'll provide, "Oh, juice, I want juice." We'll verbalize that intention, honor the gesture, provide the verbal language for it, and then give it to him, because we have to build that connection in his brain too, that this word equals this thing. They need that connection to be built. So by just saying, "Say juice," he might not know what that means yet. We're asking him to say a word that has no meaning to him. By saying, "Here's juice," as we give it to him, we're building that real world connection between the word and the thing that he's asking for, and giving that gesture a word he can use now on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really important for us to pair that, as Caileen said, but not to punish if they can't say. And what I mean by punish, I just mean not giving them what they're really asking for. So we might not get the word, but we might just, say it, model it. And as soon as we realize we push them up a little and they're not saying it, they start to get frustrated. We're going to be like, "Here you go. Here's some juice. You got some juice," right? We're going to say it again so they understand that that's the word that is now paired with what they wanted. So as we said, by not paying attention to the gestural intention, we trade the child's true communication system for speech. It's a bad trade, because if you ignore those gestures, your child will learn that his gestures and intentions don't matter. So as I said before, you must have faith that speech will come naturally as language develops. So, as I say to parents, trying to hurry speech can ruin language. there are some exceptions to the rule, like I said, with somebody who has apraxia or dyspraxia, which is a motor speech disorder, which means that they're having trouble organizing the message from their brain to their mouth on command. So they know what they want to say, but they just can't say it on command. So that's when we need other solutions, like more, traditional speech therapy, where then we can start to drill some of those sounds to help them produce speech, or augmentative communication, which would be like a device on an app. An app on an iPad or a device where they could push buttons to communicate, or they might use pictures to communicate. We're augmenting their communication, but we still have worked on the language first, right? From the bottom up to climb that language mountain. So we're working from a positive trajectory. So where do we go from here? Well, there's a number of wonderful methods and techniques for building language. The most important is to have fun together, truly. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. Because, that's what we want, is who would you want to interact with, and who would you want to communicate with, more so than, if you're having fun with somebody versus somebody who is, making you sit down in a chair and is making you try to say things that are, above your functional developmental level. So we have to think about the real reason that you're going to communicate for something is because, you have a relationship with that person, not just because you need or want things. So, you want to find a good SLP, one that's going to help guide you up the language mountain. And that's what we do in our practice at Boston SOS, is we, really help you to understand your child's perspective, where they are and what they need at this time to develop effective communication. So we can honor the gestures as communication. We can speak for the child using statements, not questions. So we're going to use lots of different statements and lots of different ways to communicate with them. So we're going to help them by, making sure, Caileen, you can keep going for a second, because my battery, I think,
absolutely. Yeah. It goes back to, it goes back to the juice thing. Instead of when he's pointing and gesturing, instead of what do you want, which doesn't provide him any language at all, it's just providing a question he can't answer, we would read his intention through gestures. I want juice. And we would say, I want juice. We're giving the child the words that they can then use back. We also do a lot of onomatopoeia, words that sound like what it means, a lot of playing with cars, vroom, a lot of animal sounds on the farm, moo and quack, because these come really easy without a lot of motor planning. Kids repeat these, they're fun, they're silly, and it's early speech sounds that we can just get them developing a motor plan for. Asked and answered will provide, he's pointing to the juice. If he has at the point where he has some single words and can answer questions, you can say, oh, did you want juice? Yes, I do. I asked it and I answered it for him. So next time I ask that question, he already has the answer modeled for him. Salient language, that is just saying what they're doing, saying things that are important to them. If they love dinosaurs, then we're playing dinosaurs, saying, oh, big dinosaur, dinosaur roar, dinosaur stomp, things that are important that they care about. That's what they're doing. Speaking to the child in normal tones and rhythms. We don't baby talk them, because they'll typically, repeat them back, and we want them to develop that sense of correct pragmatics and sentence structure. We talk with high affect, and we talk with our voices up, and we have so much fun, but I don't mess up my articulation. I use sentences at the length of the child's at. If the child's at single words, I'll use single words. If they're at putting words together, I'll speak to them in 3 to 4 word phrases. And then the next slide will show you the top 20 words that matter. Yeah, so thank you for that, Mike. Thank you. That alerted me I wasn't in charge. So, first words, these are some of the words that you're going to see once your child is really at that level. So no is a big one, right? All gone, away, stop, more, again, and some really words that have to do with action on objects: get, do, make, throw, eat, all these kinds of really functional, wash, push, those kind of words that help the child to have action. Also where things go: put, take, up, down, out, sit, fall, go. These are great, first words. Attributes, things that describe: big, hot, dirty, pretty. So we want children to learn a variety of different kinds of words, not just nouns. So the point of this is that, labeling everything in the environment is great, but we need to teach them functional words,
words that help them to communicate with other people and have that social connection, like hi and bye and look and, and also mine, possession, right? Because that's what children are going to want to communicate about, things that they want, things that they like, things that they can do, and telling people, no, don't do that, because we want to teach them how to protest appropriately. So once they're talking, we want to work on some of these earlier types of language. So we're going to finish up, this discussion on how language progresses up the language mountain after talking in 1 to 2 word sentences. And then your child will hopefully be able to imitate the words that you say, label objects, use 2-word phrases, have simple conversations, answer yes and no, which is huge, because once the child can do that, it opens up a really big world for them to communicate with you or to help you understand what they want and what they don't want. They can start to answer some WH questions, what, where, and who, which is, what I see a lot of times in the beginning of therapy is that, and with parents, they're asking their child tons of WH questions right from the beginning. What's this? What does this say? What do you do? Who is this? Where does it go? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we think about language in those 6 levels that I talked to you about in the beginning, levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, WH questions doesn't come in until level 5. So if your child is not using words and phrases yet, which is level 4, and you're still having trouble with level 1, being able to feel self-regulated enough to share attention and communicate with other people back and forth in engaging relationships, and you're asking WH questions, you're doing this, right? You're building the roof of the house without the foundation. So WH questions are something that we really wait on, and we just use statements instead of questions. And once parents flip that understanding of just how to make statements and not ask questions, it opens up a lot of communication between their children and themselves. So, the child will be able to use more verbs and action words and pronouns, and then eventually they'll ask and answer why and how questions and be able to recall the past. But again, right, that's how language progresses. After you hit level 4 and you've got those expressive language, the world is open. So I hope you can see how the language mountain works.
We start with interaction, then gestures, then words.
You've got it. So let's take a look. Good. So we're going to watch 2 videos so that we can kind of give you an example of what this looks like when a child is climbing the language mountain. So this would be like an example of from a first session with a child. And this is going to be our little friend. And he is climbing the language mountain. And so you'll see how the mom is in front of him and how she's helping him to climb the language mountain because she's following these simple techniques that we've taught her. And we'll talk to her. And so you'll hear what we're saying as well. But first step, number 1 is, what did we say? We have to have
Regulation.
Fun.
Fun.
We want to have fun. Step number 1, remember the first thing I said is that we have to have fun. So we're teaching this mom how to just have fun with her child and kind of just let go of her expectations of drilling him and trying to get him to talk, when we want to have him first have fun, right? Share attention and be regulated. So for him, in order to feel regulated, he needs to move. This guy needs to move. So you'll see him. He's going to be on the move in a minute. And then how can he engage and relate to her when he can, once he has shared attention and regulation? So now he's going to engage with her and he's going to relate to her and he's going to go to level 3, which he's going to start communicating the gestures with her. And we'll see that happen. Then we'll see how that helps support him to move to the next step, which will actually be using his words, level 4.
And don't do anything. Good. Keep going. Hi. You can go anywhere. Don't. Yeah, keep going. No.
Right.
Oh, he likes it. Keep going, Mom. Now keep going out. Keep going out. Yeah. Yeah, keep going. Perfect. And then stop and look at him and wait for him to tell you to go. Go. Good stopping. Good. I love how you're waiting. When you go in here. Perfect, Mom. Yeah. Now don't move until he does something. Okay, good.
I will.
A circle there by. Yeah.
Pretty smart stuff.
Okay, there you go. Perfect, Mom. Waiting. I love that you guys are so open to just do whatever. This is the best.
Yeah, he's a good little guy.
Wait, good waiting. Good waiting.
Oh, wait, he's asking you to do something.
Yeah, he is.
Come on, man, switch it up.
We're doing play projects. He's a-
Can I pop out?
Okay, so video number 1 is, as we said, let's just start fresh, right? If you saw this child before we started doing this, 10 minutes before this, he wasn't looking at anyone, he wasn't having fun, he was unhappy, he wasn't communicating, he was making a mess of the room, and parents felt frustrated. So they said, I want to do something different, I want to help my child communicate, and I want to have fun while I'm helping him. So we said, what do you think it is that he wants to do right now? And Mom said, oh, he wants to run around. And I was like, great, let's let him out of the room and let him run, because we're in a clinic, it's a safe space, and he's, able to do that. So we let him out and he started to run, which gave him that regulation piece that he needed so that he could share attention with Mom. And then they were engaging and looking and relating to each other. And then he was communicating non-verbally by touching her and getting her to do what he wanted that way. And then he started kind of doing it a little bit too hard. So we were like, all right, we want to help him to move up that language mountain by not only gesturally communicating, but let's see if we model some words, what will we get? Okay, so now.
And don't do anything. Yeah, that's okay. That's
We're going to watch him and we're going to coach Mom on how to help him with the next level. It's just using our words and phrases. We've got the shared attention. We've got the engagement and relating to her. We've got the two-way communication. So we're ready for the language mountain, step number 4. And guess what? This happened in 10 minutes. So this wasn't 9 months to a year. This was in one session, and we were able to help bring the joy of communication and the understanding of how that develops to the forefront.
just sit down and don't move and wait for him to try to think of something else besides slapping you. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Like let him problem solve and think, how else can I get her up? See how now he's persisting at trying to.
Looks you in the face.
Yeah, he is, but let's see what he does. I want to give him an opportunity to try to say up, run, and you can model it. You can see like up. Run. Okay, good. There you go. So now when she stops and waits, he'll use language instead of hitting her.
Right. Yeah, that goes over better.
Right. So then wait, and you can model again. Run. Oh,
All right.
so first we taught him how to open a circle with this.
Very, very, very smart. Who invented this? You invented this?
No, I wish. Now don't say anything. Keep waiting, play dumb until he tells you run. So he's even trying to turn your face. Yeah, spontaneous. She didn't have to say it.
That's cool. Oh, I see. It's after 3 tries.
She didn't even need to model it anymore. Great, Mom. You're doing awesome. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we've got the child moving up the language mountain, doing his thing, right? So When you follow these simple tips, you can help a child talk so that he or she will have joyful relationships, shared social attention, those levels 1 through 3, that they're with us, that they're not fragmented or stuck in their comfort zones. They're socially and functionally interested in others. And then they have these simple and complex nonverbal gestures with long interactive sequences of back and forth interaction, which leads to circles of verbal communication. So then we have symbolic language that's relating to our feelings and the world around them. And that's our ultimate goal. And, we want to help each child to reach their full potential, whatever it may be, but following this language rule and this language structure and climbing that language mountain to get there. So we have some references for you that we can, post as well. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer those now.
Yeah.